Hello everyone, welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host Liam, aka Himbar, and today I have another weekly update for you. This is Liam's Leapings episode 16. Okay, so the date is the 5th of November 2022, and so I'm just going to go over the things I did this week as far as reading goes. Also, a little bit, I guess, on my writing, which generally gets barely mentioned at the end. Yeah, so this week I continued The Hammer and the Blade by Paul S. Kemp, first in his Aeol and Nyx novels. I am 100 pages away from finishing. I'm really enjoying this one, actually. I am just really busy, and so my physical reading just doesn't happen a lot, especially since I do fit in short stories, which I talk about, obviously after the novels I read. So I did finish, I'll mention this one first because I read it first. I did finish The Skraeling Tree by Michael Moorcock. This is the second book in the new omnibus, the third omnibus of the Elric stuff, the Dream Quest trilogy, or the White Wolf, whatever they're calling that omnibus. So this is Dream Quest trilogy, Skraeling Tree. This one incorporates like some Viking stuff and Native American stuff, with Ulrich and Una as they live in America. It's pretty interesting. I didn't think I like it as much as The Dream Thief's Daughter, but still pretty good. I am looking forward to the next one. These are definitely thicker books compared to the other Ulrich books. And then I read Elminster and Elminster Myth Draenor is the second Elminster book. This is The Temptation of Elminster. I read the second one at the very end of last year, so it's been a while. And these are honestly probably my favorite Ed Greenwood novels so far. I really enjoyed Elminster The Making of a Mage, which I've done a review of, and Elminster Myth Draenor. This one takes place like 500 years after Elminster Myth Draenor, so there's a lot of space in between that he could have written stories about. Hopefully he'll get the chance someday. Though with the way D&D novel line is right now, there's a good chance that won't happen, sadly. But this is really good. I really enjoyed this one. I'm a big sucker for this, so go check out my reviews. Maybe it's something you'll be interested in. So yeah, it's still cool to see like a somewhat young Elminster. I say 500 years, so obviously he's a couple, he's at least 500 years old at this point. But he's just getting into his role of, basically the Elminster that everyone knows when they think of Elminster in the Forgotten Realms. What's funny is that he looks younger on this cover than he does in Elminster Myth Draenor. Anyways, the next book I read is one I don't have a physical copy, and this is a first. I don't have this copy, and it's a Forgotten Realms novel. I read Mistress of the Night by Dawn Bassingthwaite, which is kind of a tongue-tying name. The co-writer is Dave Gross, though when you listen to the audiobook, it just says Bassingthwaite. So I know Gross must have helped somewhat with this one because his character from the Black Wolf novel, Fina, is in this novel. She's one of the main characters. And it's cool because this novel is about, it's set in Sembia, in the Forgotten Realms, which is just south of Dalelands and east of Cormyr. It doesn't get a lot of novels set there besides the Erebus Kale novels and the Sembia series. This is actually kind of a prequel to the second Erebus Kale trilogy, the Twilight War trilogy, as the Leaves of One Night is an important text of Shar that is very important in this story, actually, and that based off the events of this story, it kind of comes up in the Twilight War trilogy. I read the Twilight War trilogy before this, obviously, so that's fine. But it was cool to see Fina again. I read the Black Wolf almost 3 years ago now, so which is crazy to think it's been so long. That's right around the time I started my quest to read all the Forgotten Realms novels. I will get a physical copy of this at some point. I actually did find a relatively cheap copy, so I might get that. But and then I started reading The Scions of Shannara. It's kind of white, hefty. This is the first book in the Heritage of Shannara. I've had these books since the beginning of last year. I read Elfstones of Shannara, and it was I think it was the first book I read in 2021, actually, and I really enjoyed it. So I read Wish Song about April of 2021, I believe. I didn't enjoy it as much. I meant to get to these sooner. I just haven't for whatever reason. Shannara is not like the greatest like fantasy ever written. It's not my favorite by any means, but there is something cozy about it, and I was feeling like, it's nice. It'd be nice to step back into this cozy world of Shannara. And so I am. So yeah, I have these cool old Valentine editions though. So Shannara. So I did read a little bit more in the unpublished book number 2 I'm doing for my internship. I did not read nearly as much as that as I would have liked to this year. This week. I'm just like, I maybe like depression like coming on. I don't know. It just feels very mild. But so anyways, I just got hammered this week. Anyways, I'm getting a little early into what the books I got this week are, because I did get a copy finally of Mask of Vindication, the Dark Souls book, in hardcover. It's published by Yin On, which is like they publish manga and maybe light novels. I don't really know. So this is like their one novel, which is just weird. But it's really cool. I'm liking this book. It's even got some Dying Earth vibes to it, which is what I'm liking about it. I am about 40% of the way through this one. So, yeah, I'm enjoying it. So, I also read this before I forget that. Okay, and then I'm also reading a little bit through some Fantastic stuff. This is Fantastic Magazine. It's August 1975. I'm trying to remember what the heck I read in this, but I think it was The Words by Fritz Leiber. It's actually this. I want to share this. This is, he's reviewing the Year's Best Horror Stories, Series 2, edited by Richard Davis, forward by Christopher Lee, Daw Books, 1974. In dealing with stories of supernatural horror, that is, tales of fear of the unknown and fascinated wonder at it, one can easily lose sight of the fact that their basic function is to give us goose flesh, an eerie chill, a shiver of dread, a frisson, that useful French word. This is something more than physical fear. The threat of torture by the Gestapo or the imminent prospect of being cut up by a maniac with a razor-sharp butcher knife does not give us goose flesh, but rather a sick feeling at the pit of the stomach, a desperate impulse to flee or strike out, and a paralysis that suppresses the latter. It is the difference between being locked in a room with a real Black Panther and imagining there might be a Black Panther silently crouched just behind a closed door. He grabbed my attention with that. That's the opening paragraph for this review. And I love it. I mean, Leiber is considered a grand master of horror. And you know what? That basically just put into words my feelings about a lot of modern horror. I don't read or really watch any of it because a lot of it just seems to be going for gore effects, right? And a lot of modern horror is that. It's just a maniac about to cut you up with a knife. And that's not supernatural horror, so I mean, it can still be horror. But I like supernatural horror. I like eerie. I like creepy. And Leiber's really good at that. So also, I got another issue of Fantastic. This is the February 1975 issue. Fritz Leiber does some other reviews in here. I'm not going to read it now for you, but basically I'll summarize. I read earlier this year, and I did a video on it for my fantasy essay videos, of Ursula K. Le Guin's From Elfland to Poughkeepsie, where she's critiquing prose, basically, of fantasy authors. And she mentioned Leiber in there and basically says, Leiber, you should do better, essentially. And he agrees, essentially. He doesn't mention that she called him out specifically, but he says this is one of the best essays I've read in a long time, basically, and it's making me relook at my writing. And, it's funny, I read that essay, and then I read Swords and Ice Magic shortly after, which is the 6th book in Fafhrd the Greymaster, which came out as the first book that came out in that series after that essay was released. And it seemed like, excuse me, that he took it into account because it comes off as very Shakespearean. He's just a lot more archaic, and I don't know, it's just, there's some references in there from other literature that I caught, which I think is what Le Guin was saying, is better. I didn't agree with Le Guin 100% anyways, but it was definitely very interesting. So that's my random rating that I didn't even put in my notes here. I just wanted to mention. I did catch up with The Weave in the Void, the serialized novel, over on the Patreon. Again, you can read the first 3 chapters or so for free. I read chapters 26 to 29, and it was fun to go back into this world. It's been a couple months since I read these, and I'm just a big fan of Tim's writing, of Renfield's writing, of T.W. Anderson's writing, and it's interesting. It's definitely a first draft, but it's still nice to be able to see it come together, and it's cool experience that, honestly. And it's just a good story. It's very cozy at the same time as well. Definitely, it's epic fantasy and the spirit of Dragonlance in some ways. So, and then I read it's below here. I read The Altar and the Scorpion by Robert E. Howard. It is another Cole story. It doesn't actually have Cole in it. It's very short, like the last one. Cole is mentioned, and he's like eminently arriving off screen, but he doesn't actually arrive because the story's so short. I really like this one though. It again seems like Howard messing with a more. He's like, oh yes, let's do Lovecraft, but let's give the protagonist a sword, type of thing. It's a little different here. I mean, just like the last story, because, anyways, very good. I'm loving my journey getting through this Cole collection here. I'll get back to Conan probably once I finish this. So, hey, and then I read, well, I'll mention this one too. I read the next story in New Edge. I didn't read any last week, so I think I mentioned that last week, but I finally got a physical copy, and I read The Beast of the Shadow Gum Trees by T.K. Rex. I've never read anything by Rex. I believe it's a she. But it was pretty enjoyable. It was very interesting. Definitely not something I had read before. But now I only have like 2 more stories to go left in New Edge. And the next one is Vapors of Zanai by J.M. Clark. I'm looking forward to these ones. And then it's The Grief Note of Vultures by Brent Hammond. I'm looking forward to that one a lot too. So, and then there's some essays, which I'm really looking forward to. I actually kind of just want to skip ahead and read those. But I will control myself. There's one on C.L. Moore. So if you want to learn more about C.L. Moore, it says the first lady of Sword and Sorcery. She was writing Sword and Sorcery in the 30s, so forever ago, right? You need to read Joelle Jory. If you want to read a fantasy author who is a woman and wrote a main character that was a woman, that wasn't happening a lot back then, and they were great stories anyways. So anyways, I read that, and then I read actually 2 stories in here. I got this book. Okay, I don't know how they're saying it. Fedi is how I want to say it, but it's probably Fedit. I'm not really sure. It's kind of French, but it's more Occitan. And then it's Cercamon. Cercamon. Pretty sure I'm doing that C right. The first one like an S, and the second one hard like a K. Excuse me. Anyways, this is by Arthur Gilchrist Broder. These stories first appeared in Adventure magazine. It looks like they were all on Adventure. I might be misreading some of these, but yeah, I read Fisherman's Luck in Before Midnight. So the first one, actually, the main character is actually only Faded, and the second one introduces Cercamon. Cercamon's actually a historical character. He is actually a famous troubadour, which is pretty cool. And I thought, hey, a duo? Like, I love those. This one's older than Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. I know Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser is inspired by a duo from Cabell's work. I think that's how you say his name. Never read any of that yet, though. But this is pretty cool. And I actually heard about Gilchrist, or rather Broder, from Scott Oden, who's an author. I reviewed his A Gathering of Ravens recently. He mentioned him as basically the American Tolkien, in the sense that he wrote a fiction, but he also was a scholar. And he was, and I have this book by him as well. I actually got it last week, forgot to mention it. The Art of Beowulf. The first thing he mentions in this book is, during the 20 years that have passed since the publication of J.R.R. Tolkien's famous lecture, Beowulf to Monsters and Critics, interest in Beowulf as a work of art has increased gratifyingly, and many fine papers have made distinguished contributions to our understanding of the poem as poetry and as heroic narrative. Basically looking at Beowulf as a piece of art, right? It's his response to Tolkien, where we're not looking at it as a historical source, which I still like doing too. So I have not really read anything of this yet, but I got that. Another book by Broder I got. So this one is actually co-written by his buddy that he seemed to actually co-write a lot, Farnham Bishop. This is In the Grip of the Minotaur, which I believe, it's really short, is a novel about like some Norsemen, like Goths or something, bringing down about the downfall of the Minoan civilization. I'm not really sure. It seems pretty cool. It's not realistic in some sense, obviously there, but like it's That sounds awesome. So I thought, like, and it looked cool. You can only get like 3 of Broder books currently in print. The one of Fated and Sericamon, in the Grip of the Minotaur, and then like The Power to Rule or something like that. And I'm not sure what those stories are. I really want his Lady Fulvia stories because those are from the teens and then probably the 20s. Also co-written by Bishop, one of the earlier female protagonists in pulp stories. And DMR Books said on Instagram when I asked them that they might do a reprint of them. Some other publisher was supposedly supposed to do one when they announced it like 10 years ago, but they haven't done it. So he's like, if they don't actually end up doing it, then I might do it, is what DMR said. So that is cool. Yeah, but the 2 stories actually about Fated and Sericamon are pretty interesting. Actually, they're pretty easy to read, honestly, and they're like very straightforward. But I don't know, they're pretty fun. They take place, Fated is Toulousain, from the county of Toulouse. Toulouse is in present-day France. It's in, Aquitania at this time, basically. It's its own independent thing, essentially. It is not French. And then Sericamon is, well, he seems to be Aquitanian, which is a similar situation there. And but he serves, in this case at least, he serves Barcelona, which again is separate and not part of Spain at this time. Actually, it has closer relations at this time period to France, because it used to be part of the Carolingian Empire. Later, it's actually shortly after these stories take place that they have their marriage with Aragon, and then that ends up when they combine with Castile, that Spain is born, basically, right? Anyways, I digress. And so, good reading, good book buying. I like to keep these things short, but I suck at it. I also got The One-Eyed King by Ed Greenwood. This is a Fate of the Norns novel. It's really short. Ed Greenwood's my guy. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. It takes place in the city of Achlea, is how I want to say it. It's Athclea or something like that. It's Dublin, basically. It's Viking Dublin. It seems pretty cool to me. I don't know when I'll read that. I have so many Ed Greenwood novels I have not read yet, but I've read a lot of Ed Greenwood novels still. He's one of my most read authors. So, as far as writing goes this week, NaNoWriMo started. I don't know why it has to be a national thing. That doesn't really make much sense to me. So basically, it's novel writing month. And funnily, I'm not using it to write a novel. I'm so fickle. I have a hard time enough finishing short stories. So I'm using it to write short stories, and I'm really hoping to finish at least 3. I'd like to get 4 done. I'm getting there with my story, which is like half fantasy, half science fiction. I really like old school stuff where they just say screw it to genre boundaries, because they didn't exist so much anyways back then. But it's pretty fun. I'm over 5,000 words, about 5,400 words. So I'm not sure how much longer it's gonna take. It's just motivation is harder to come by just because I'm so busy. But I am getting that one done. I'd really like to do like another Aryan story. Aryan's like the character. I don't know what's up with it, but like he's just fun to write. I really need to finish a Renata story, especially for that booktube thing. Renata is like the perfect character for that, so I wanted to write one of those, but I need to feel inspired to actually do that. So hopefully I can get that done. Anyways, let me know what y'all have done this week, what you are reading, what you went to read, what you did, I guess. Is anyone else doing the writing for this month? Anyways, let me know. I'll catch you next time. Williams Lyceum.